Well, it's 8:35, and we're hunting down Anne-Marie Baiynd. She's an author and financial analyst. She joins us every 2 weeks to give her take on the markets.
Hi
Anne
there.
Marie,
How are you?
Good,
how's
Anne. Go ahead. How you doing
uh,
today?
I'm doing well, and how are you?
Good. We got some action here in the S&Ps. Did you have an inkling overnight, or you been up since all night trading this? How are you positioned for this little? I guess it's not really a surprise. Give us your take on the S&P futures.
Sort of expected, right? When we got the news that they were going to shut their banks and their markets down for the whole week, there'd be some kind of ripple of some kind. For me, I expect a great deal of volatility and chop, and so I like to let the dust settle a little bit before I jump in. But if we think about, the bottom line in terms of if they do leave the euro, if they do have trouble, the people that are going to suffer the most are, small businesses and whatever who are trying to find their way to keep enough money in the till to pay their suppliers and whatever, right? But Greece is such a small entity that in the end, I think it's going to be a little bit more of a hiccup in terms of what generally the charts are doing. And so if we get back to what generally the charts are doing, we're still in this sort of range-bound space. We're just testing closer to the bottom edges of the ranges, right? If we take a look at a daily chart, we can see essentially that we're still caught up here in this upper space. And if we look at something like a 4-hour chart, we'll be able to see that, we really are bouncing off the bottom of a channel that we've tested a few times. Once back here on June the 15th, and then again on May the 7th, and then, we had a little bit of a breakdown there in March. But, from a larger perspective, I suspect that really all we're doing is testing the bottom of the range, because the bottom line in terms of how Greece will affect global markets really is more of a financial question, and who's attached to their bonds and that sort of whatever else that's going on in there. But for the rest of the broad market, I don't really see any kind of ripple effect making anything dreadful here. So my thought was, hey, listen, if it comes down into these areas and stabilizes, maybe gives us a little retest and a higher low, it's time to buy up into that gap space. If we're taking a look at, I look at the ES a lot, but if we take a look at the SPX, my thought is essentially that same sort of thing. We'll gap down, fill the gap, and then we're back in the chatter zone where, all that price congestion is. And really, it's the same song, maybe a different verse.
Anne Marie?
Same song. Yes,
Talk,
sir.
talk about, okay, so we've defined, and I was saying basically the same thing you were, that we're back here at support where we've bounced off here a few times. How do you play this? Because obviously you come down to support once, you come down to it twice, coming down here maybe the third time here now. Sometimes I say no such thing as a triple bottom. Not sure if that's going to come in here or not. How do you play it when, you've got the overall market coming into support?
Well, for me, I'm going to look for the balance of momentum. And
Okay.
I expect buyers to show up in the SPX down here at this support region. I do expect the buyers. So what I'm going to do is expect the buyers slip into a much smaller time frame cycle and then watch for the test and then the retest. And at the positive retest, I will take the long. But if it tests and retests in a measure of weakness, I'll sit back and wait. And if momentum drifts downward while it moves sideways, I look for relative support. As a break support, I'll take the trade into the first target. I'll take some profit if it pops back up. into the resistance area and still is carrying negative momentum, I will add. Otherwise, I will get out, because that normally tells me if momentum shifts back up off of a bounce, it's in a sideways pattern. And so I'll play as well as I can in that space. My goal always being, listen, can I find the space of least risk that I can get myself involved in quarter size, watch it establish, and then add to the position as it comes in and presents more power. Because my big thing is, hey, I don't want to be the maverick stepping out there so I get zambonied or run over by a freight train. I just want to watch it grip and hold the level with that momentum so that I can take the trade. And I use things like the stochastic momentum index to help me with that momentum, but I am really fiercely looking at that price action behavior at support. If I expect buyers to show up and they don't, we know there's a problem.
We're on the line with Anne-Marie Baiynd. She's an author and financial analyst. Anne-Marie, we also have another factor kind of playing in the market here. We had, we had the Russell rebalance, and we have the trepidation over the Fed, but we have the end of the quarter coming up tomorrow, and sometimes the managers like to dress up or dress down their portfolio here. Do you, you think that's going to be a factor here in today and tomorrow's session? They try and hold up those winners and get out of those losers?
Most certainly. And certainly they want their clients to see the right things sitting in their books in the right measure. And so that always is a question. For me, I look at it in terms of noisy range-bound action, so I have to be very careful. I try to trade actually really pretty lightly those last days of the quarter, and I do have some trader colleagues that say, you know what, unless something absolutely begs me to trade that day, I am just not going to do it, because there's so much noise that happens there. Certainly from a follow-through perspective, you can't really put too much credit on that, but definitely that just adds to the noisy mix that we're sitting in.
So, Anne-Marie, what's your trade here for today? Because obviously, the market's weak here. We know overnight that a lot of the financials have been weak here with the Greece news. What are your setups? I know you've been looking at some charts here over the weekend. What's your trades here for today?
For me, what I would love to see are some of my old favorites. I'm looking for a space to get involved in Gilead on a pullback, because it's broken out and it looks very nice, and so I like that. I think that Adobe had a false breakout, so I'm going to watch it come back in. I'm already short there, so I'm going to be looking for that to slip right back into its trading range below so I can take some profit, figure out what's going on. Oil is always in my wheelhouse. Expected a little bit of a drop. I had been long midweek last week and noticed it was absolutely not able to get above that 58, 90-ish area, 59. And so towards the end of the week, I said, you know what, this thing is going to collapse. It's just not holding up. And so I'm looking for it to be short. This great big spike up here has got me wondering what is going on, but I essentially am going to be watching oil carefully as it breaks down, retests its breakdown level, and then probably is met with more sellers. So I'm really, that's really where I'm focusing this week. There's a lot to look at though, right? Last time we talked, I was talking about all the hyperextensions that we saw in all those Chinese ETFs. But the bid-ask spreads were really, really wide, and those things have really continued to come back in. Now they're sort of sitting in spaces that are a bit flat, that might pull a bounce out of it. So in the coming week, I'm going to be watching that behavior to see if it sets up a lower high and can take us lower there. And of course, always looking at that IYR as it drifts lower. I think it's finally into a support level that ought to take it a little bit sideways before, ultimately coming into that 70/68 low on the year.
Yeah, that's been one ugly chart. Anne-Marie, I just want to talk to you about Gilead here a little bit because
Yeah.
you've been bullish this thing for quite some time. And do you have different time frames that you trade this on? I mean, I know you look to trade it on a daily basis, but is this one of the stocks that you just put away a chunk in your portfolio or
Yes.
trade some
This is
options?
one of those, absolutely. This is one of those beasts that I look at and I go, all right, if it comes into 97, I'm just going to pick some up. And if it comes into 105, I'm just going to pick some up. And if it comes into 110, I'm just going to pick some up. And so right now, it's getting a little long in the tooth because it's finished what I would think to be maybe a little bit of an expanded butterfly harmonic. And so it is right up against resistance, came into resistance a couple of days ago, saw it topping out there. And so made some adjustments, but still pretty heavy long term in this particular stock. I just think it's coming in, and I will not be doing any more acquisition until it drops all the way back down into the 114 area. Then I'll watch it again for more acquisition, but I've got some accumulation at some very nice prices, and so I don't really have to worry about that, but I'm definitely not buying any here now.
Do you sell any?
Yes, I did sell some. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I did sell some.
Okay.
I try to trade around a position, so I will only have a total certain amount that I go, all right, you're only going to have this much sitting in here. And when I do my last accumulation, what I really am looking for, what I begin to look for is those stopping points to take profit.
Okay, moving on. We just got some stocks that are moving here. Any thoughts on GE here? I mean, its stock is they did the big buyback, holding on, just kind of in a trading range. I was looking at this. It still has like a really high PE. I don't know. Is this something that is that dividend enough to keep you interested in a stock like GE?
It's not something that I normally look at. And if you take a peek at that chart, you'll see something that clearly shows up as like a W with a little bit of a gap sitting in the middle of it. One of the arms is longer than the other. That also a trading harmonic right into the extension zone. And so really what it's coming back into is a support area. Though having the gap below makes it a little bit like a three-legged chair in terms of balance. If it holds it there long enough, it looks like it's solid. I mean, it really does look like as long as it holds 2650, it's going to be in fairly good shape. If it loses 2650, it's going to fill that gap, or at least 50% of that gap, and then move back to the upside. That's my estimation. But as far as strength goes, this one really is starting to build strength. You can see buyers just setting in and saying, no, you know what, I'm comfortable with accumulation here. And when I start seeing that, keeping those guys happy, those buyers, because nobody's really penetrating any levels lower, it really does look like something fairly solid to have in your accounts, to me anyway.
Emery, I have one more for you here. It's Alibaba. This stock obviously it was hated, then it was loved there for a little bit of May, and now it seems to be hated here again. It is down another $1.50 here this morning. 151,000 share sell imbalance on the stock this morning as well, as putting extra pressure on it. Trade 93,000 shares already here on the pre-market at 81.87. What are your thoughts on Alibaba?
I like this one, except what it's in the middle of doing is filling the gap, and so it's almost done. So if there's a sell side imbalance and you see a big wash this morning and it comes into about 81, watch the buyer step in. They're going to come and they're going to plant themselves right down there. I don't know how many of them are going to be able to stop the bleeding, but it is clear to me that this chart is in some kind of gap fill event. The gap down is going to give us a double gap in the space. So it's going to have to fill one space of the gap. Might have trouble at 82.86. Again, 82.90. But if it can hold that area, it's going to start lifting again. This is really, a lot of people really do a swing on this one, but clearly from a technical perspective, it's in a gap fill formation. Even though this chart is fairly young, it tries to fill its gaps. Last time it had a big giant gap. It filled about 50% of it, but came into a level support before dipping over. And I think that overall, the chart is creating stability down there, even though it is very noisy at this patch. I think 81 looks very inviting. To me, as a trader, I'm going to watch for the buyers.
80.85, that was the high on May 6th. Then it gapped up. And Des, we've been talking about this one for a long time about filling the gap here. So we'll see if that transpires. We've been on the line with Anne-Marie Baiynd. She's an author and financialist, a trader. She's written a book, The Trading Book Course, a practical guide to profiting with technical analysis. Anne-Marie, great information as always. Thanks for coming on. We'll speak to you in a few weeks.
Thanks for having me. See you guys later. Good luck trading.